Hey Elizabeth, how you doing? All right, let's go take a look. I've got your PDF up right here, and we'll go ahead and take a look. All right, okay, from the start, the cover looks great. I think the logo is really super interesting. One thing I would recommend in the logo is watch your contrast. This wonderful illustration, the logo mark itself, the book, the little folded book, doesn't have enough contrast to really be visible. So I would recommend trying to create a higher degree of visual connection between the book and the text by just increasing the contrast of that of the little illustrated book just a little bit more. I think that's going to really bring out the visibility and of that book, and it really enhanced the logo quite a bit. Let's jump over to the presentation. I think presentation is a little distracting, and the reason I say that is because you've got these series of stripes at the top and the bottom of the pages, so it's really kind of difficult to determine where one page ends and one begins. Do you see what I'm saying? It's my recommendation is to reconfigure the page a little bit so you don't have all of these lines up top and then all of these lines below. Just use the lines below, one or two lines, that's it. You don't really have to. Right now you're kind of squishing all of the content on the page in. You're really missing out on a good portion of real estate on the page based on these the size of these visual vertical line or horizontal lines. So I would recommend increasing the use of the horizontal lines and increasing the space of the page, available page. Okay, so starting out with the abstract, that's good. Target audience. One thing I would recommend here is you're giving the abstract, go to the problem statement first. Okay, I think the problem statement is the first thing you want to do. Give your abstract, then give your problem statement. Then give your app solution proposal. So you've got, here's the problem, here's how my app is going to address the problem, all right? Then you can go into your research analysis regarding your target audience, etc. So that's really important. So you definitely want to set up in that regard, like I've stated in that regard. Okay, really good. 49 is a little young for that demographic to be honest. But it's media, so folks use media clear into their 60s and 70s. However, you do have a really good reason. You're giving statistical reasons why you ended that age at 49. I still think it might be a little bit young to I would increase that target just a little bit. Okay, issues. There's your problem statement. So we do have the problem statement, but we do need an app solution proposal to address the issues identified in the problem statement. Your competition, your competitive comparison analysis page, I think is incomplete. The reason I say that is because right now you're grouping your examples from your comparative analysis in one group. Okay, so you're not really identifying individual flaws and pros and cons associated with each individual competitor. Okay, for this, to rectify this issue, I would recommend giving a dedicated page to each of the competition. So Kindle gets its own page. So in that page, Amazon gets its own page. And in that page, you're going to talk about, a couple of things. In your comparative analysis, I would recommend giving 3 criteria, pros and cons for 3 different criteria for each of the competitors. The pros and cons for the 3 criteria are functionality and features, visual design, and usability. Again, that's functionality and features, pros and cons. Visual design, pros and cons. Usability, pros and cons. Give each of the competition a separate dedicated page, and you might even also show the interface placed on a mock-up of an interface placed on an iPhone or an iPad, just to give the viewer a good idea of the competition. Persona, yes, good job on your persona. I think 2 of your persona individuals are too close in individual demographic. I think Jason at age 22 is a college student male, and Caitlin at 19 is a female that's an artist. So I think these are too close. You want your scenario individual personas, and I'm sorry, you want your personas to be completely different, as far wide ranging as you possibly can. Other than that, I think the personas are set up quite nicely. Good job there. Okay, now we go from persona to scenario, right? I see you're not using your individual setup in your persona for your scenario. I recommend you do that. So your scenario should use Jason Samantha and Caitlin, or I recommend at least two scenarios. So two of those, what you would do is you would take the person in your persona and give the situation. So this situation right here would have one of the people in your personas. So these are good scenarios, but what you want to do from here is you want to map these. I mean, I'm sorry, you want to sketch these out in storyboard. So you're given an actual storyboard of this scenario. So you've got a problem. You're showing Jessica. You're showing this situation sketched out in storyboard format, linear narrative. Okay. Okay. Then we go to the wireframes. Let me check something really quick. Okay, from the persona scenarios storyboards, you may also consider task flows, scenario task flows. So you could show the linear narrative of the action in the scenario, and then show your task flows of how your app would represent the tasks involved to address these situations in each scenario. You also might consider including a sitemap. Um, Wireframes. Okay. Oh, there's your wireframes. Good job on your wireframes. If possible, I think it would be great to include digital wireframes, but this seems to be. I'm not sure if these. So wireframes, just to be sure, are visual representations of all of the screens in your app, and I think that's what we have here. So wireframes are good. Prototyping. Um, okay, so this looks like a task flow. So I would recommend that you call this a task flow and give the task that's associated. What is going on here? What is this task flow where we're following this series of commands? So in other words, describe, and then you've got two of the same screen here. One arrow's pointing here, one arrow's pointing here. I'm not real sure why we've got, actually here's a third screen. Maybe this is just showing the keyboard. Okay, so anyways, yes, that would be called task flow, and you want to give a verbal description of the task that's being represented visually in this task flow. Um, Definitely want to do that. Prototyping, these are digital representations of the tasks in the task flow. So again, describe what's going on here. Definitely want to describe. Okay, user testing is really important here that you give the criteria for the test. So in other words, what task are you asking this user to complete, and how, and record the results of that task. Not in this kind of bird's eye view, but give exact details as to what happened during the user testing stage. You should probably have at least three user testing. So this wouldn't cover user testing stage. You would have a much more detailed representation of the user testing stage itself. Okay, so including the tasks associated with each test that you're depicting visually here. Okay, so for example, you would say, okay, in this user test, I asked the user to set up a user profile. Okay, and then you would show the tasks, and then you would say, okay, did they get anything wrong? Are they following wayfinding correctly? Are they following navigation correctly? If they got something wrong, record it and indicate that you had made changes to further prototypes, and that those changes will be reflected in your click-through prototype, which will of course be reflected in the final design of the app. Okay, so okay, so you want digital mock-ups of all the screens in your app, and that's not wireframes. That's actually how are they? What do they look like? What does the actual screen look like? Graphics, everything in place. Okay, and that's shown in the example right here. Okay, so you can see we really get a good feel of how this is going to look, and we get a great feel for the personality and the visual demeanor of the app. So you definitely want to include that in your process book at all. Okay, also we're going to need a project summary, also your bibliography, including research and image sources in this presentation as well. So yeah, you're getting there. I mean, you're coming along beautifully. I think that there's a couple of things that I think need to be added to the process book itself. And not to worry, because process book is due during week 5. So in the week 5, welcome to week 5 announcement that will be posted at the end of week 4, I'll go ahead and list all of the requirements for the process book itself. And then recommendations as well as requirements. So, all right, good job. If you have any questions at all, please let me know, and I'll be glad to clarify anything that isn't specifically clear at this point. But really, really good job so far. One other recommendation here is a little bit of inconsistency in the presentation itself, in that these pages are not using the template layer background that you've set up. And again, I recommended that you change that a little bit, simplify this page a little bit. I mean, so we look at this page, it's like, okay, where does it pay? The top of this page, here's the bottom, right? It's the top of the page is where. It's just really difficult to see what's going on with all of these. And I think one of the problems is the fact that the gray and the stripes is the same color as the gray in the background. So it's just creating a little confusion. But anyway, at any rate, the inconsistency I was talking about is the wireframe and prototyping pages aren't using the same background that you're using in the rest of the presentation. So there's a little inconsistency right there that you might consider addressing. All right, so again, questions at all, please let me know. I'll be glad to clarify. Thank you very much.